You've barely warmed your seat in the palace, and they've already sent you off on a delivery. Welcome to the ancient express lane. You thought working in the palace meant copying scrolls, pouring tea, maybe sneaking in a nap behind a pillar now and then. Well, surprise, you've only been on the job for 3 days, just enough time to figure out which way the toilet's facing already. You've been handed a sealed letter with a fancy red stamp and a vague instruction. Take this to the provincial office. Immediately, you try to ask if there's a horse involved. There isn't. You ask if someone's going with you. Nope. You ask if you're being punished. No. They say, this is an honor. Right. In ancient China, the official postal system known as the Chuan-Yi system was a government-run communication network that could span thousands of miles. It connected capital cities with border outposts, military command with civil bureaucracy, and sometimes even royal gossip with the people who weren't supposed to hear it. You, however, are not royalty. You are what they call a foot courier. That is, your job is to physically run messages across the empire, one station at a time, with nothing but a letter in your sleeve and a sack of dry biscuits on your back. No horse, no escort, and definitely no tips. The postal stations, or liaison, are placed roughly every 30 of the apart, about 15 kilometers. In theory, these are places where couriers can rest, switch animals, and maybe grab a warm meal. In reality, unless you're a high-ranking envoy with a golden badge, don't expect more than a sip of lukewarm tea and a place on the floor next to a very loud chicken. In the hierarchy, oh, it's very real. There are mounted messengers who ride in style, chariot riders who deliver only imperial decrees, and then there's you, a newbie with sore feet and vague instructions. Some historians like to call couriers the information bloodstream of ancient empires. But let's be honest, at your level, you're more like a paper cup with legs. Still, try not to be discouraged. This is only the beginning. Soon you'll be stepping out onto real imperial roads, where your path is marked by dusty milestones, clattering hoof beats, and the occasional suspicious smell drifting from a nearby ox cart. Ready? Great, you've officially entered the ancient logistics network. Good luck keeping your shoes. The postal roads looked exciting on the map. In person, they taste like gravel. Bright and early the next morning, you set off. And by bright, we mean the sun isn't even up yet. And by early, we mean someone just threw a boot at your door and yelled, "If you're not going in 10 minutes, you're late." You tie your worn sandals with shaky fingers. Grab the tiny satchel they gave. You it has exactly 1 letter and 3 stale bean cakes and stumble out onto the road. This is your first real day on the Yeda postal road. On paper, it's a straight, logical network of paths connecting towns, cities, and fortresses across the empire. In practice, it's a narrow dirt track lined with confused goats, mysterious puddles, and the occasional collapsed cart left there, presumably as a warning. You quickly learn the first rule of ancient delivery work. You are never the fastest thing on the road. Someone on horseback will pass you. A delivery team with a handcart will pass you. A very determined old lady carrying firewood will absolutely pass you, and she might offer you a dumpling out of pea. You try to walk with purpose, like they taught you in training, 1 foot in front of the other, steady breathing, eyes on the path. But after an hour, you've already eaten your first bean cake and started talking to your own shadow. The dust is relentless. It kicks up with every step. It clings to your sleeves, your teeth, your dignity, and no one has this charming habit of blowing it directly into your eyeballs right when you're trying to look heroic for the passing car driver, who might have been a government inspector, probably not. But still, at one point, you pass a sign that reads, "Next station, 20 to Lee." You try to do the math, and that's around 11 kilometers. Your legs do the math too. They protest. To keep yourself going, you start singing under your breath, just softly enough that the goats don't judge. You hum a little tune about surviving your first mission, about becoming the empire's most respected postal runner, about getting upgraded to horse status someday, maybe even a very slow horse. A mule would be fine. As the sun climbs higher, Your pace slows, but so does everything else. The road stretches like an endless ribbon of tan and boredom. Nothing much happens, and somehow, that's the point. The imperial postal system wasn't designed for drama. It was designed for endurance. A steady rhythm of messages flowing across mountains, deserts, rice paddies, and politics. You, dear traveler, are now a part of that rhythm, and after hours of dry wind and lonely footsteps, you finally spot it, your first official postal station. It's small, dusky, and slightly tilted to one side, but to you, it's a palace. You limp toward it like a hero returning from war. One of the guards glances up, chews slowly, and says, "First day, you not." He points to a stool under the eaves. Said, "Dust wears off eventually in the imperial delivery game. You're not late, you're just dramatically behind the horses." You've barely sat her down on the cracked wooden stool when you hear it. The distant, unmistakable rhythm of hoofs on dirt. Not a gallop, not quite a trot, more like a highly motivated clip-clop with a purpose. And then, they appear. Two riders blur past the station gate, barely slowing down, their silk pennants flapping in the wind, like they've got tax policy to deliver in zero time for pleasantries. They don't wave, they don't look. One of them might be eating a dumpling. You're not sure. You blink, and they're gone. Just a trail of dust in their wake, and one very startled chicken waddling for cover. Welcome to the upper class of couriers, the mounted messengers. Unlike you, sweaty, blistered, and still chewing yesterday's bean cake, these riders belong to a whole different world. They're equipped with fast horses, fancy uniforms, and something you deeply envy: speed. In the ancient Chinese courier hierarchy, speed was more than a convenience. It was status, and the fastest among them. They were part of the urgent dispatch or GMA system, literally fast horse. When royal orders had to cross the empire, these riders relayed messages like passing a torch in a race, switching horses at every station to avoid tiring a single one. You, on the other hand, are the torch, a walking one, slightly bent. They wore even rare fire arrow dispatches, so named because they were considered as urgent as flaming arrows in battle. Carried only by elite messengers, these missives traveled day and night with no delays allowed. Rumor has it, the last guy who caused a delay was reassigned to latrine duty in a swamp. But don't take it personally. Your job is still important. After all, not every letter is an imperial decree. Some are tax reports, some are salt trade manifests, some are long, boring scrolls written in tiny handwriting that you're not allowed to peek at. You tried once. It was about grain quotas, and the truth is, the empire needs all kinds, even foot couriers. You're the slow heartbeat that keeps communication alive at the edges. You're the one who delivers messages too unimportant to write but too important to lose. You're essential in a humble, unshowered, probably as blistered sort of way. As you rise from your stool and prepare for the next leg of the journey, another rider approaches from the opposite direction. He nods politely, tosses you a dried plum, and gallops off without a word. It's a small gesture, but it feels like respect. Sort of. You eat the plum. It's sour. You take a deep breath. The road stretches on. Time to keep walking. In the ancient mail system, not all letters were created equal, especially yours. A few miles down the road, after your feet have settled into a rhythm of resigned discomfort, you come upon a curious sight. A tiny village with exactly one bored rooster, two visible humans, and miraculously a side stall selling boiled peas. You consider stopping, you almost do, but then, as you approach, the old man behind the stall squints at your courier badge and says the sacred phrase, "Oh, you can help me send a letter to my cousin in Luoyang." You smile politely, you prepare your best apology, and you give him the same answer all couriers are trained to give. Official mail only. Turd. The man frowns. It's just a short letter about a goose. You bow respectfully. Imperial regulations. He mutters something about bureaucracy, throws a peanut at a dog, and waves you off. Such is the bittersweet reality of the ancient Chinese Sichuan system, it wasn't built for the people, not all the people. Anyway, the Imperial Post was a state-run operation designed for transmitting government documents, court orders, census reports, military intelligence, and the occasional strongly worded memo about rice taxes. Private citizens, they had to find other means like merchants, traveling monks, or that one uncle who swears he's going to the capital, but ends up in a tea house for 3 weeks. In fact, for much of history, carrying personal letters through the government postal system was strictly prohibited. Some dynasties even issued fines or punishments for couriers who got too helpful. The system was sacred, efficient, hierarchical, and painfully slow if you weren't important enough. There were exceptions. Of course, sometimes a noble family might bribe a postal officers. Sometimes a village elder had connections. But for most folks, no horses, no stations, no goose letters. This created an entire underground delivery economy, a shadow network of runners, traders, and literate beggars who smuggled messages across provinces in their shoes, their hats, even stitched into their sleeves. One merchant famously hid love letters between layers of dried fish. Romantic, also smelly. But for you, the low-ranking food courier, you play it by the book. You carry the letter you were given. You protect it like your honor. And you do not get involved with suspicious peanut vendors and their cousin's goose situation. At least not today. You give a quick bow, adjust your pack, and walk on past the village, past the peanut stall, past a sign that optimistically says next station, only achingly. You do not cheer. You've learned it better. Official mail only. One letter, one destination, no detours, and hopefully, no more goose drama. You were promised a place to rest. They just didn't say you'd be sharing it with chickens. After hours of walking, sweating, and pretending not to be jealous of ox carts, you finally spot the next postal station, a low building with a creaky roof, a slanted doorway, and the faint smell of something. You hope it's noodles. You know it's not. This, according to imperial guidelines, is a relay post, one of the official liaison, where tired couriers like you are allowed to stop, rest, and switch carriers or horses, assuming you have either, which you don't. You drag yourself through the gate, hand over your travel token, and offer your most pitiful face. The station attendant nods once, says nothing, and points to a corner where a pile of straw is pretending to be a bed. You collapse onto it. It's prickly. Something moves inside it. You choose to ignore that. Welcome to the glamorous world of postal accommodations, where luxury means a roof that only leaks on one side. These inns were never meant for comfy or functional outposts, just warm and dry enough to keep imperial logistics from falling apart. And if you're not high-ranking, you're getting the economy package. There's no bath, there's no food service, there's no pillow unless you count your shoe. But you do get one chipped ceramic cup, a bucket of lukewarm water source unknown, and a chicken that insists on roosting next to your face. Still, it's better than sleeping in a ditch, which, according to station gossip, happened to a courier last week who arrived after hours and tried knocking on the wrong door. It turned out to be a blacksmith's house. His hammer etiquette was firm. You glance around the room. A senior courier is snoring softly in the next corner, his scroll pouch tucked under his arm like a teddy bear. Another younger runner is nervously oiling his sandals, whispering what sounds like a motivational poem. Someone's boiling turnips in a pot. No one looks particularly well rested, but there's something comforting in the shared misery. You're all just puzzle pieces in the Empire's vast machine, tired, dusty puzzle pieces who know exactly how many blisters a pair of government-issued shoes can produce. Before bed, you check your message scroll one more time. Still sealed, still dry, still destined for the next province. You tuck it close to your chest, curl into the straw, and let the soft clucks of your chicken roommate lull you into a light, twitchy sleep. Because tomorrow, you woke again. Ancient empires had a rush delivery option. It usually involved panic, shouting, and sore hooves. You've just started to downsie off in your straw bed, serenaded by the gentle snore of the senior courier, and the rhythmic pecking of the chicken next to your face. When bam, The station door slams open. A breathless rider bursts in, half covered in mud, holding a scroll stamped with something ominously red. Urgent dispatch. Fire sealed. Needs a fresh horse no. The room shifts instantly. The snoring stops. The turnip pot is forgotten. Even the chicken looks concerned. Ew, of course. Have no idea what's going on, but the station master does. He straightens up, salutes the rider, and starts barking orders like it's a war scene. Within seconds, someone's grabbing the fastest horse. Someone else is pouring water into a saddle pouch. And the scroll, it's still glowing slightly from the fire seal, an actual wax mark signifying ultra priority, reserved for only the most time-sensitive imperial orders, usually involving things like border invasions, or rice tax scandals, or which cousin the emperor is mad at this week. The fire seal system was the ancient equivalent of emergency push notification. It meant drop everything, ride like the wind, break the rules if necessary. Some dynasties even required relay posts to keep spare horses warmed and ready, just in case one of these flaming scroll messengers galloped in yelling about Mongols. The system was dramatic. The system was fast. The system was also incredibly inefficient, but no one dared say that. To meet the speed demands, express riders were allowed to skip meals, wake up station masters in the middle of the night, demand fresh horses without paperwork, ignore most traffic laws, though traffic consisted mostly of ducks and very confused pigs. The goal, cover hundreds of miles in a single day, be relaying the message from rider to rider, horse to horse, like a sweaty, multi-legged torch passing through the empire. As you sit quietly in your straw nest, watching the chaos swirl, you feel the conflicting things. Relief, you don't have to do that. You are far too low ranked to carry fire-sealed scrolls. Jealousy, those guys get horses. Still, there's a strange energy in the air. You're witnessing the empire's arteries pumping at full speed, scrolls flying. Orders shouted. Wheels turning. It's clumsy. It's beautiful. It's bureaucracy on horseback. The rider mounts his fresh steed, adjusts his satchel, and with a final nod, disappears into the misty night. Hooves pounding like thunder across the earth. Silence returns. Someone goes back to their turnips. The chicken resumes pecking your sandal. You close your eyes, wondering what kind of message is so urgent that it needed to be fire-sealed, horse-swapped, and rode across the country at top speed. Probably something deeply important. Probably something no one will read in time. Some couriers have for legs, others have wings and a surprisingly strong sense of direction. You've now been on the road long enough to recognize the rhythm. Walk. Deliver. Walk some more. Maybe sleep next to a sheep, so when you reach the next postal station and see a cage full of bird-sexual living birds, you pause. The attendant says, without looking up, the backup system. You blink. We use birds. He nods. Matter of fact, pigeons, empire grade. Turns out, you're standing in front of the ancient equivalent of a wireless network unit. This one coos a lot and occasionally flies in the wrong direction. Yes, long before telegraphs, the Chinese, like many ancient civilizations, used carrier pigeons as part of their broader communication web, especially in mountainous regions, war zones, or places where a man with sandals just couldn't cut it. These weren't ordinary pigeons either. They were trained specialists, carefully raised to return to specific home towers from hundreds of kilometers away. Once released with a tiny message capsule tied to their leg, they flap off into the sky, like feathery little scrolls with surprisingly reliable GPS. Do they always make it? You ask. I'm one that's definitely packing the corner of its own cage. The attendant shrugs. Usually, as long as a hawk doesn't get curious, or a storm, or that one time in Shandong when a pigeon just vanished for 2 years and came back with a note that said sorry, got lost. You're not sure if he's joking. He doesn't smile. Despite their occasional detours, pigeons were often faster than foot messengers, especially for short, urgent reports like battlefield updates or border alerts. They didn't need food stations. They didn't demand fresh sandals. They didn't file complaints about the chicken they had to sleep next to. but they did require very specific training. Each pigeon was bonded to a particular roost. You could only send a pigeon back to its home, not away from it. That meant if you wanted pigeon service, you had to bring the birds with you from the destination, wait until you needed them, and then let them fly home with your note, which made you wonder how many scroll-carrying soldiers had to walk into battle with a pigeon under their hat. You look again at the bird cage. One of them makes eye contact. It looks strangely judgmental. You tip your head in a small bow. Fair enough. You've been outpaced by horses, out-hustled by old ladies, and now apparently out-delivered by birds. At this point, you just hope the chicken at the last station wasn't trying to tell you something. Flying all day isn't as glamorous as it sounds, especially with bandits and storms on the route. You might think carrier pigeons have it easy, just flap a bit, deliver a message, and call it a day. Nope. Turns out, the life of an imperial pigeon messenger was full of hazards, drama, and some very questionable snacks. First off, training wasn't a walk in the park. These birds had to memorize their home loft from miles away, navigating mountains, rivers, and unpredictable weather. One wrong turn meant a long detour, or worse, becoming lunch for a hungry hawk or eagle. Ancient pigeon keepers took their job seriously. They had pigeon lofts, mini bird apartments with strict schedules. Birds were fed, watered, and exercised like tiny Olympic athletes. Some even had pigeon passports, little tags tied to their legs with unique markings, so their owners could identify them if lost. But the pigeons weren't just postal workers. They were also diplomats. In times of war, their messages could change the fate of armies. That added a layer of stress. Every flight was high stakes. Then there were the storms. Rain, wind, and thunder made navigation tough. Sometimes pigeons returned soaked and exhausted, barely able to stand on their tiny feet. Other times, entire flocks vanished into the clouds, never to be seen again. And food, well, you probably wouldn't want to know what pigeons ate during long missions. Ancient records mention grain mixtures that probably tasted like dusty crackers sprinkled with mystery seeds. Despite all that, pigeons were indispensable, faster than any foot courier and able to cross terrain that horses couldn't. They were the original wireless messengers, feathered and fearless. So next time you see a pigeon cooing in the park, remember, somewhere deep inside, is the descendant of a heroic bird who once flew miles across ancient China, dodging hawks, storms, and bad weather to deliver an urgent message. And unlike you, it probably got a proper meal afterward. Not all messages made it through. Some were swallowed by the wilderness and forgotten forever. You've heard the stories. Scrolls swallowed by rivers, lost in dust storms, or simply dropped by tired couriers too exhausted to care. Now, you're about to experience the wild truth behind those tales. The mountains were the greatest challenge to the Empire's postal network. Jagged peaks, sudden faults, and treacherous paths turned every delivery into a gamble. A letter could be lost forever if the courier slipped on a rock, or if a sudden landslide buried the trail. Sometimes, couriers found themselves trapped overnight, with only the distant howl of wolves and the rustle of bamboo for company. In these moments, the message felt less like a noble task and more like a weight pulling them into the earth. Entire letters vanished without a trace, becoming silent ghosts of forgotten news. And for those waiting at the other end, officials, soldiers, even emperors, this meant uncertainty, delays, and sometimes disastrous miscommunications. But the Empire endured. New routes were charted, additional stations built, and tales of lost letters passed down as warnings for new couriers like you. So, as you look up at the towering peaks, you realize every successful delivery is a small miracle, carved from dust, sweat, and a stubborn will to keep messages alive. Beyond letters and scrolls, couriers carried some surprisingly practical and strange items. Walking the long imperial routes wasn't just about moving from one station to the next with a letter in hand. A courier's pack was a small survival kit, honed over centuries to handle whatever the road threw at them. First and foremost, the letter itself, sealed tightly in wax or silk to protect it from rain, dust, and nosy neighbors. But what else? A sturdy knife for cutting food or defending against stray dogs or worse. A water skin, often just a simple leather pouch, sometimes filled from questionable streams. A small bundle of dried food bean cakes, rice balls, or whatever the local market had to offer. A brick-sized, stone-sized reality that doubled as a pillow or seat when no benches were available. A change of sandals, or at least strips of cloth for wrapping tired feet. An official token or badge to identify them as imperial couriers, granting access to stations and inns. Less official, but no less important, a worn piece of cloth or scarf, used to wipe sweat, dust, or tears because those long dusty days could be unexpectedly emotional. Interestingly, some couriers carried small charms or talismans, believed to protect them from bad luck on the road. Broken arrows, painted stones, or tiny bells that jingled with every step. All these items weren't just practical, they were the silent companions of the courier's journey, tools for survival, comfort, and sometimes superstition. As you tighten your pack and prepare to move on, you realize the courier's true toolkit is a mix of necessity and hope, carrying the weight of messages and dreams alike. Along the empire's edges, local customs turned mail delivery into an art form, while imperial roads stretched across the heartland. The borderlands told different stories. In rugged mountains and vast grasslands, minority peoples developed their own unique ways to keep messages flowing. Take the Tibetan highlands, for example. With snow-capped peaks and thin air, horses weren't always reliable. Instead, skilled runners known as Drogpa would sprint over narrow paths, their feet barely touching the rocky ground. These messengers memorized routes like poems, sometimes navigating without any written directions. In southwestern China, some minority communities use smoke signals or drum beats to send urgent news across valleys, combining natural sounds with visual cues. It wasn't mail as you know it, but it worked. The Yao people carried small bundles of herbs that released distinctive scents along trails, alerting nearby villages of incoming messages. Imagine messages delivered not just by words, but by fragrances. Even the Mongols, famous for their horse archers, maintained a postal system called the a network of relay stations with fresh horses, food, and shelter. Their efficiency inspired imperial couriers far beyond their own lands. What unites all these diverse methods is a shared understanding. Communication was essential, no matter the terrain or culture. As you trot forward on your dusty road, you carry a piece of their wisdom, a reminder that messages find their way, often in unexpected forms. Beyond the empire's heartland, messages braved scorching deserts and towering peaks. The Silk Road wasn't just about silk and spices, it was also an ancient information superhighway stretching thousands of miles from China to the Mediterranean. Merchants, monks, and couriers all played their part, passing letters and news through blistering deserts and treacherous mountain passes. Unlike the official imperial routes, these caravans faced unique challenges: sandstorms that erased tracks overnight, freezing nights under starlit skies, and the ever-present threat of bandits who had little patience for paperwork. Messages were often carried in sealed scroll tubes or hidden in goods like tea bricks or pottery. Sometimes, traders used coded symbols or secret marks on their caravans to indicate safe passages or warn of dangers ahead. The couriers here were a mix of locals, nomads, and sometimes even diplomats, search adding their own cultural flavor to the long journey. The mountain passes demanded guides who knew every twist and turn, while desert travelers relied on celestial navigation and ancient oral maps. Despite the hardships, news and orders flowed steadily, linking distant empires and cultures in a fragile but vital network. So as you imagine the slow footsteps of your own courier journey, picture this: a vast caravan resting by a desert oasis, a sealed letter passing silently between hands beneath the flickering firelight, another story in the long chain of human connection. Through wars and regime changes, the courier's route stayed steady even when the emperors didn't. History isn't kind to governments. Dynasties come and go like seasons, with battles, betrayals, and palace intrigues reshaping the map again and again. Yet through all this chaos, one thing remained remarkably constant: the postal system. When a new dynasty took power, one of its first orders was to restore communication lines. After all, an empire that can't send messages can't rule effectively. Sometimes, couriers like you found themselves caught in the middle of these upheavals. One day, you carried a letter signed by the old emperor. The next, a message stamped with the new ruler's seal, demanding absolute loyalty. Post stations might be abandoned or overrun, horses confiscated, and roads blocked by soldiers. Yet the message had to move no matter who Saturday on the throne. In fact, during times of rebellion or foreign invasion, courier networks became lifelines for resistance leaders and generals. Secret codes and invisible links were invented. Trusted runners passed encrypted notes under the noses of enemies. For the humble courier, it meant adapting quickly, wearing different uniforms, learning new routes, and sometimes delivering letters you wished you never had to read. But through all these changes, the rhythm of the road endured. Step by step, letter by letter, the ancient mail system proved to be more than just government. It was the spine of civilization itself. Not all messengers were men. Some women braved the roads with quiet courage. When you think of ancient couriers, you probably imagine dusty men in official robes, marching determinedly with scrolls in hand. But history quietly remembers a few remarkable women who defied expectations and carried messages across dangerous terrain. In times of war or crisis, when male couriers were scarce or the roads too perilous for large groups, women stepped up. Some disguised themselves as men to take the job. Others used their underestimated status to slip past checkpoints unnoticed. One story tells of a woman from the Han Dynasty who, after losing her husband in battle, took up the courier role to deliver vital intelligence to the front lines. Traveling alone through mountains and enemy territory, she relied on her wit and agility more than speed. Elsewhere, in border regions, female runners from minority communities acted as crucial links between villages, carrying news, supplies, and sometimes secret letters hidden in baskets or clothing. Though official records rarely mention them, these women shaped communication networks with quiet determination, proving that even in a man's world, courage and duty knew no gender. So next time you feel tired on the road, remember, you're walking in the footsteps of many, including those who traveled silently but fearlessly through history's shadows. Before delivery, letters themselves were tiny masterpieces of craft and care. Long before emails and text messages, every letter was a physical object crafted with intention, precision, and sometimes a touch of artistry. In ancient China, paper was invented around the 2nd century BCE, revolutionizing communication. Before that, couriers carried messages on bamboo slips, silk cloth, or even wooden tablets searched bulky and fragile. By the Tang and Song dynasties, delicate sheets of paper became the norm. Scribes used brushes dipped in black ink, creating flowing characters that were not just writing but a form of calligraphy and art that demanded patience and skill. Sealing a letter was just as important. Messages were folded carefully, then secured with wax seals or tied with red threads to ensure privacy and authenticity. Sometimes, special stamps or imperial marks indicated the letter's importance or origin. The choice of paper, quality, and handwriting style all sent subtle signals about the sender's status and the letter's urgency. A beautifully penned note could open doors. A rushed scribble might close them. For couriers, handling these fragile treasures was a sacred duty. One wrong joke could smudge ink, tear paper, or lose vital words. So when you cradle your letter and wrap it safely before setting off, you hold more than just paper. You carry a piece of art, history, and human connection that transcends time. Behind every letter lies a story of patience, perseverance, and the human need to connect. As our journey with the ancient couriers comes to rest, remember this: each dusty step, each tired footfall, and every carefully sealed scroll carried more than words. They carried the hopes, fears, orders, and stories of millions long gone. The roads were rough, the inns humble, and the work often thankless. Yet, through centuries of change, war, and peace. These messengers, human, horse, and even feathered, kept the heartbeat of civilization steady. Their stories may seem slow, even boring at first glance, but in their quiet persistence lies a powerful truth. Connection is the oldest human need, and the humblest couriers are its steadfast guardians. So next time you send a message, pause for a moment. Think of the ancient foot courier trudging across the empire, the pigeon soaring over mountains, and the rider galloping under the stars, carrying not just letters, but the fragile threads that hold us together. Sleep well, traveler. The road goes ever on. If you'd like, I can help you craft an outro script or visuals to match this gentle closing.